and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And we are told that God further spoke and said, and God said that there be a firmament amidst the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. We are told that then God made the firmament and divided the waters which were above the firmament from the waters which were under the firmament. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the second day. That was the language of Uzziah, friends. He will speak and things will happen. Uzziah will speak and things will happen. In other words, he will speak the language of God. He had all that which he needed. He had respect, he had money. He only needed to speak a word and things will be done. I know there are people here who have the language of Uzziah. They speak and things happen. The few things of enjoying God has given you, friends, don't misuse them to speak the language of God. The language of God will still remain to be the language of God, however much God may bless you with. The problem is that, friends, what made Uzziah to speak the language of God is that Uzziah forgot the giver and he worshipped the gift. Uzziah will speak the language of God. He was so much interested in the gift that he forgot the giver. There are few here, friends, who have begun speaking the language of God. With just some few resources which God has given you, you have already begun competing with God in speaking his language. We'll just speak and say, there is no problem, let it happen, let it happen. But to some of us, to the majority of us, even that speaking is a problem. We will always remain silent when amidst people. When even people are asked to speak and speak their names and say where they come from, you will even keep silent. That's the time, that moment you'll walk out of that room. When you hear people doing introduction and saying where they come from and what they have done and who brought them where they are, you will usually walk outside that room. If you are in a place where people were enjoying and celebrating some moments, and it comes to a time when you are introducing yourself, then that is the particular time to walk out. Because you will not even want people to know your name, and you will not even want people to tell who brought you there. It could be that even you came uninvited. But to Uzziah, things were different, friends. He could only speak a word and things will happen. That was Uzziah. But let me finish, friends, because of time. In verse 16, we are told, friends, I'm finishing. If time will allow, we will speak. We will have learned a lot about Uzziah. But listen to verse 16, friends. We are told that in verse 16, friends, we see a turn of events, and this tells us the reason why Uzziah has to die. Listen. With all these qualifications, friends, listen in verse 16, that with all these qualifications that Uzziah had, his heart was filled with pride. He exalted himself. He exalted the gift and forgot the giver. And friends, that is the downfall of every Christian. That when you begin to brag and to be filled with pride, then that is the moment you are digging your own grave. In verse 16, we are told that, but when he was strong, when Uzziah was at his peak, when Uzziah was very strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against the Lord his God, and went into the temple of the Lord to burn incense upon the altar of incense. That when Uzziah was strong, pride filled his heart. Let me tell you, friends, it could be that you are an Uzziah. From a very young age, you have enjoyed the privileges of God. In fact, not only the privileges, but you have been a leader like Uzziah at a tender age. That even at the age of 16, you have been nominated to be a member and a leader in the church. And since then, you have been a leader in the church for many years. It could be that you are a leader in the church, and like Uzziah, you have accomplished many things. In fact, you have been speaking the language of Uzziah due to the great leadership you have had. You have just been speaking and things have been happening. But we are told that when Uzziah was strong, when Uzziah was at his peak, his downfall began. Let me tell you, friends, with the few things you have just begun speaking about the language of God. But the moment you are filled with pride, in fact, I don't know what it's Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, or 18:16, we say that pride cometh before what? Destruction. When Uzziah was lifted, in fact, we are told that when his heart was lifted above, then he began falling slowly but surely. When you come to a point, friends, where you say that this was done by me, this has been done and accomplished by me, then that's the moment you are digging your own grave. And that is the reason why Uzziah must die. We are told that, friends, it came to a time when formality and pride took the place of humility. Listen from the inspired word of God, Prophets and Kings, page 303, paragraph 2. That in Uzziah's life it came to a time that this outward prosperity in Uzziah, however great it was not accompanied by a corresponding revival of spiritual power. That when Uzziah was growing rich outward, this was not accompanied by what? By a revival of spiritual power. Then we are told in the following paragraph, paragraph 2, 303, paragraph 2 in the same book, Prophets and Kings, that pride and formality gradually took the place of humility and sincerity. Of Uzziah himself it is written that when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction, for he transgressed against the Lord his God. When pride and formality takes the place of humility, then that's the time you begin falling. To Uzziah, he did things. Actually, we are told that now, because of the prosperity of Uzziah, he even no longer regarded God anymore. He could walk into the temple and do that which it seemed better to him. He even forgot that offering incense was only the work of the priest. That was the Levitical priesthood, the works of the sons of Aaron. He forgot because pride filled his heart. He thought that he will do everything because he had the language of God. Uzziah thought that he can do everything. There is much to talk about Uzziah, but just continue. Go and read about Uzziah. He said, in fact, he said that we no longer need these prophets, this priest called the sons of Aaron. He just walked in the temple and then began offering incense. That was Uzziah. When you are filled with pride and you say that you can do everything, friends, that is when you begin falling. To Uzziah, he said that I no longer regard any person. I no longer even regard God. I can do everything I wish to do. Let me finish up, friends. Even in the life of David, you are told in the book Patriarchs and Prophets, page 717, paragraph 2, even about David, a man after God's own heart, that it was even the spirit of self-confidence and self-exaltation that prepared the way for David's fall. God is still reminding us that however great you are, however much prosperity you have enjoyed, the spirit of self-exaltation and self-pride will always prepare a way for your downfall. And in fact, friends, you will fall like Satan, like lightning from above. Luke chapter 18, verse 5. Where Luke says that I saw Satan falling from heaven like what? Like lightning. That is the fall you are preparing for yourself when you begin having pride in your life. Let me finish this up, friends. This is so interesting. Listen that he had a rebellious spirit. He was not ready to accept his mistakes and repent. In fact, Uzziah said that he needed not to repent. That was the condition of Uzziah. And that thing necessitated his death. Verse 21, we are told that he was separated from God. And then we are told that he died a miserable death. And in fact, friend, just about to finish up, towards the end of the life of Uzziah. Uzziah was a king for 52 years. But God struck him with the leprosy, that he was no more Uzziah. And when people will see Uzziah, who was a great king, people will not even want to pass along Uzziah. God struck Uzziah with the leprosy that even small children will run away from Uzziah. By that time, leprosy was a very grievous disease. And when you had leprosy, even you will be sent out of the community. That was Uzziah, the ending of Uzziah. The things I will have mentioned about Uzziah, but time will not allow, friends.